What's going on, guys, and welcome to a different kind of video. Today we're going to be actually making a proxy and taking you through the process as I make mine. Now, just to clarify, I do not own any of these images. This is just something I thought would be really fun for you guys to follow along with. If you are interested in picking up any of the proxies that we do create, we have a couple that we have hand painted available on our store at itresolvesmtg.com. Otherwise, you can pick them up as Patreon rewards. We like to give out something physical each month to say thank you for everybody who supports us on a monetary level, and the proxies are a great way to do that. So we do send those out every month. If you're interested, our Patreon account is patreon.com/itresolves. Without further ado, let's go ahead and jump right in. Okay, so as you can see, we are going to be doing Blightsteel Colossus today. We're gonna really focus on the art for this one as well, and I've got a few things that we're gonna start with. First and foremost, I wanna start with the frame. I'd like to get essentially this entire piece of artwork in this giant rectangle here. Now, to do that, we do have to get rid of these little bumps because I'd like for this to be straight all the way down on both sides. So let's start there. Okay, so the first thing that we are going to do is actually select basically any part of the artwork up here where we do have these straight lines. So notice we've got the straight lines here, we've got the straight lines here. Essentially what we're going to do is copy that, which basically just makes this little rectangle of the artwork here, and all we're gonna do is move that, hold shift to make sure that that stays in line, and essentially just drag it over top of where we were before. That creates this nice clean line all the way down on both sides. Now we'll fix some of these internal lines later, obviously black on white and black on white here. Doesn't look perfect, but we'll fix that in just a little bit. First things though, we do need to zoom in just a little bit and fix this little line right here. I'm a big stickler for things like this. We're gonna do the best we can to make sure that we are fixing it. So we're gonna add a little layer mask here. Make sure that the hardness of the brush is down, all the way down, and make sure black is selected. And essentially all we have to do is click once. And essentially that masks out a little bit of this and feathers that edge, so that way it keeps it nice and clean. We'll do the same right here. Just a couple of little clicks here to make sure that we're keeping things nice and clean. Do the same thing on the other side. And that is actually step one done. Okay, so obviously I know this doesn't look great yet, but the idea now is that we can essentially mask out this beautiful area in the middle here to give us that nice clean frame around the entirety of the outside. Now we're gonna have to do a little bit of extra work around the power and toughness because obviously this is a creature. This is gonna breach that frame a little bit, so we can't just do a perfect rectangle, but we'll get to that in just a second. Okay, so first things first, to make sure that we're doing this nice and cleanly, what I am gonna actually do is merge layers here. So this essentially just takes all that we have done so far and condenses it down into a single layer. Now, all we really need to do at this point is using the rectangular selection tool, just come down and essentially line up as best we can with the square or the rectangle that we see here. Now it's not going to be perfect, we'll fix some of that later, and again, this is actually going to breach into that power toughness a little bit, but that is okay. So now that we've got that selection, if we hit mask, you'll notice that the entire outer frame is actually what goes away. It's really easy to fix. We just look at the mask properties and click invert, and now all of a sudden we've got a nice, beautiful frame, albeit with a little bit of an issue right here. Okay, so like I said, we do have to fix that power toughness, so let's go ahead and jump into that now. Okay, so to do this, essentially we're just going to be editing the mask that we have already created for ourselves on the frame. So what we need to do is zoom in just a little bit and we'll come down to where that power toughness is. Make sure that on the brush tool is where we are at with white as the foreground color, and make sure that your hardness is set all the way to 100. We do not want any of that fuzzy feathering, that fancy stuff that we did on the frame itself. So let's go ahead, we'll get a smaller brush here, and we can actually just paint back in where we have got that frame. Now, of course, the idea is we're gonna overpaint a little bit and then reduce back. So if you hit X, it's gonna bring that black to the foreground color, and we're gonna edit the mask slightly. Make sure if you would like to get a perfectly straight line while you're painting, you can click and then hold shift, and it's just gonna get you that nice, perfect straight line in whichever direction that you were trying to go. And then over here, we can just kind of very subtly paint away that edge. and we'll do the same thing to the top. Again, holding that shift key just to make sure that we're getting it nice and clean. And that's basically it. That's the frame done. All right, so next is to actually drag in the artwork itself. This is a very simple task. Obviously, you're literally just going to drag it in. I should go ahead and mention at this point, I take all of the artwork that I use for the cards from Google and from different places. I do not own any of that artwork. I'm not trying to claim that I do, but the Scryfall is a great resource to pick up any of the actual cards themselves, the images of the cards themselves. But if you just want that selected artwork, make sure that you're using as high res as you can possibly find. Otherwise, it's going to stretch, it's going to get really blurry, it's not going to look as great as you would like it to. And so I would recommend searching for a very large high res image if you can. Alright, so literally this is all you have to do. Essentially just take the artwork that you have downloaded, that you have found, that high-res image, and drag it in. Then at this point you just want to scale it up so it's covering essentially any of these, this little checkered pattern that you're seeing, which is essentially just transparency. Once you have it roughly where you want it, I'm going to drag it just a hair this way. I'm going to hit enter to select that and then drag it to the bottom, and essentially all that does is throw it into the template itself. Now you will notice if you look right down here, and we'll actually zoom in on that just a little bit, we see that we missed just a little bit of the frame when we were deleting out around the power toughness. Very easy, very quick fix. All you got to do is take that brush tool, make sure that black is the foreground, and again you can set that hardness to 100. Make sure that you are selecting the mask and painting on the mask, and essentially just go ahead and clean that line up, and then there we go, we have got the artwork. Okay, so the next step is actually just to get the text above the image. That way you actually know what the card does, and it's not just a beautiful piece of artwork, although it is a very beautiful piece of artwork. Now, for Blightsteel Colossus, the original artwork does have the new Phyrexia symbol behind the text, which makes it a little bit difficult to use. So what I have done is taken the double masters printing, and I'm going to be utilizing that to pull the text out of the image, overlay it, and then make sure that it looks really nice and clean within this layout. So to start, the first step is really just pull in your new artwork. So this is obviously, like I said, that double masters printing, and you'll notice it does not have that new Phyrexia symbol behind the text, which is going to make this step a lot easier. Once it's in, you can hit enter, and I'm actually going to take the polygon lasso tool and select out this text. We don't need any of the other stuff, we really just want this text here, and so it's really nice and simple to use the polygon lasso tool for this. I just like to go through, select as cleanly as I can. It doesn't have to be perfect, we get to feather this edge and make it really nice and clean later on, but essentially you're going to select that, and again we're going to use the mask tool to pull that text out of the image. You'll notice it essentially blacked out everything else. And then now the goal is to select just the text and get rid of all of this background image. So what we're going to do is we're going to use color range. So if you come up to select and use color range, we make sure that we are pulling the shadows, which is essentially just the darkest sections of the image. And then you can play around here. I like to set the fuzziness at 100. If you'll notice, if we go down, it's selecting more and more of the rest of the card. And so what I like to do is essentially just play around with the range a little bit here and make sure that it's exactly where you want it. You'll obviously see what is being pulled out. This looks pretty clean to me, honestly, so I'm going to go ahead and hit OK. And then you'll notice essentially we have got the text above it. It doesn't look great, but we'll fix that in just a second. So essentially this is too dark. We need that white color over it. So I'm going to take the color overlay tool or effect and go over here, select white, and you'll notice essentially this is placing white above the colors that we have selected out, which is literally just the text. Now there's a couple things we need to do to fix this up. The first step is really just to size it. So Control T, or excuse me, there we go. Control T is going to give us exactly what we need to select this. It's going to look like it's selecting the whole thing, but that's obviously just because there is a whole card underneath it. And you can just kind of size this the way that you would like to. I like to try and make sure that, at least as best we can, there's an even spacing here and here. And you can even move it down slightly using the arrow keys to really refine that and make sure that it's exactly where you want it to be. Now the next step is actually to really clean this up. You'll notice that there's a little bit of a line here, and we can actually zoom in just a hair. And this is essentially where that color range picked up a little bit of the background. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take the brush tool. This time we are gonna size up just a hair, and we are gonna drop that hardness down. We're essentially using the same trick that we did before on the frame. And so we can take that and make sure that you are painting on the mask with black in the foreground, and it's just gonna clean up that hard line. Now you're gonna notice that there is a little bit of bleed over from the background. You can do your best to clean that up as you would like. Personally, you really don't notice in printing. I will just go ahead and tell you, but it does make sure that you are making sure everything is as clean as possible. And again, just coming over that and making sure that we're getting rid of all that background that was there before. And as we can see, that gives us nice clean text above a beautiful image that is all in this amazing full art frame. Now there is one last step that I like to do. You'll notice, and we talked about this at the very beginning, if we look right in at the line here, if we zoom in just a hair, you'll notice there's this weird black line that just cuts down, and that's essentially where the artwork of the frame and the text of the frame don't meet up perfectly from the original art. And so what we're gonna do is essentially take a black line and just run it all the way down to the bottom here. So let's do that on both of the right and left side, and that'll actually finish up the proxy. Okay, so to do these lines, you can literally use the line tool. Make sure that your stroke is set to black, and I actually like to use a 2-pixel line here. I find that spacing works very, very well. Whoops. So let's go ahead and do that. And again, you're not going to get it perfect on the first run, but the idea is you get to click where you feel the line should start, hold shift, which is going to keep that line very, very straight on that angle, and then just let it go. And that is it. Now you may have to change here. It looks like we do throw that at a 2-pixel line. And then you'll notice here that it's not perfect. We do need to play around with it ever so slightly, but that's not a problem. We can actually just use the arrow keys to do that. And I think we might actually need to go 3 pixels for this one. Yeah, that looks a lot better. You want to make sure that there's no awkward spacing or anything like that. And if you do really want to perfect it, you can look, there's just a little bit of a line there that we want to make sure we cover. And so what you can do is just very cleanly pull that line down. You do want to check the top and bottom because again, that can get very noticeable. That's actually not too bad. And so that's one line done. Essentially the other side is exactly the same. So what you can do is just copy this line, Command or Control T, to drag this line over. Again, holding shift, you want to make sure that top is exactly where you had it before to keep things very, very even. You will have to come down on these creatures and pull this line up ever so slightly just to make sure that you're not breaching into that power toughness. Again, it doesn't look perfect, but this is just to clean things up and make sure that the eye doesn't notice that very little subtle white to black line that really doesn't look super clean. And at this point, we are essentially done. This is the final product. At this point, I would export. Make sure that when you do export, if you plan on printing it, you want to make sure that you're at CMYK and at 300 for the resolution. You want to make sure that you have got that high quality print marker for yourself. But this is the whole thing. This is all of it. So if you do have any questions, please let me know. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I know it's a bit different for us, but I thought this is something that I could share for you guys that hopefully you enjoy. But I do appreciate the support, guys. Make sure if you would like to pick up any proxies, you do so at our website, itresolvesmtg.com, and patreon.com/itresolves. Really do appreciate the support, guys, and hopefully I'll see you in another proxy making video.